at the top of the hour. And the president of Iran is warning the United States that any attacks on their supreme leader could constitute an all-out war, as President Trump calls for an end to the Ayatollah's reign.
So Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst all over this. He joins us from Tel Aviv with the latest. Hey, Trey.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. Over the weekend, Iran's supreme leader continued to attack President Trump and the United States of America. The Ayatollah Khamenei addressed a crowd on Saturday that was chanting death to America and death to Israel as he called President Trump a criminal. The remarks, which were broadcast on state-controlled media, followed a slew of X posts where he falsely claimed the U.S. orchestrated the mass killing and chaos in Iran.
We consider the U.S. president a criminal for the casualties, damages, and the slander he inflicted on the Iranian nation.
In an interview with Politico, President Trump responded saying it's time to look for new leadership in Iran. And on Sunday, Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian warned that any aggression against the supreme leader would be considered an all-out war. As the country's leadership is discussing more about the protests, new video provided to Fox News by a source in Tehran shows Iranians gathered outside of a morgue demanding answers about their loved ones. The Iranian regime is now admitting at least 5,000 people were killed during these demonstrations. The true number is likely much higher and could be in the tens of thousands, according to some estimates. Another source in the predominantly Kurdish Iranian city of Kermanshah told Fox News that he saw bodies in the streets and that security forces came and took some of the bodies away. Around the world, protests and vigils have been held for those Iranians who were killed and the thousands that remain imprisoned following the crackdown.
The message here is keep pressure on Iran. And what's really important is, as the vigil tonight is calling for, is all political prisoners need to be free. So President Trump should set that as a new red line to have the Iranian regime release 50,000 protesters, peaceful protesters that were arrested by the regime. So we're asking the White House, keep the pressure on Iran.
Here in Israel, the military and political echelons continue to hold consultations about the possibility of war with Iran. Guys, back to you.
So Trey, the death toll you kind of indicated is higher than listed. I've heard 16,500. I've heard 300,000 have been hurt. What numbers are you getting?
Yeah, the death toll is far higher than we even know. The Iranians themselves are admitting 5,000 killed amid these demonstrations. Human rights organizations say the number could be north of 12 or even 16,000. The issue here is an internet blackout, making it incredibly difficult to get information on the ground in Iran. I've been speaking with Iranians who are using Starlink satellite uplinks, and they say that they have seen hundreds killed in their cities. Kermanshah in the predominantly Kurdish area of Iran. Further south of Tehran, in Isfahan, in the capital of Tehran, you're getting similar reports, and also horrific images are being shared showing how these security forces opened fire on crowds of people, aiming at their eyes, trying to blind the demonstrators. And so while the Iranian regime is trying to block us from reporting, we're doing everything we can to get around those hurdles so that we can bring this information to the world.
And to that point, Trey, yesterday on this program, we interviewed an Iranian-American, Moj Madara, who has a lot of family still inside Iran. She put that death toll 16 to 20,000, she said. And I asked her, what are the people in Iran right now really focused on needing? And they said that Starlink has got to continue to come, and that's the only way the true story is getting out. Are you hearing any more about the Starlink efforts to keep those coming into the country?
Yeah, Griff, absolutely. These Starlink terminals are the only way that much of Iran is able to communicate with the outside world, and the regime knows this. And so I've talked with sources who say that security forces are going door to door in major cities trying to look for Starlink terminals to confiscate them and then arrest the people that are using them to communicate with the outside world. There are a number of SIM cards from other countries that are also working in Iran, giving a small group of people the ability to phone the outside world. But it truly is an internet blackout, and it's creating a scenario where we know just 1 or 2% of the reality on the ground. And the images that we're getting now are predominantly coming from state media, and so they're certainly sterilized. And the comments that you heard earlier from Iran's supreme leader directly taunting President Trump, who has called for the regime to stop this crackdown on protesters and to immediately halt any sort of executions that were planned.
Trey, what about the executions? Last week, there was supposed to be that 26-year-old, 24-year-old young man that was supposed to be hanged. But then there were 800 more that were supposed to be executed. Donald Trump got involved and warned them against that. What's the latest there?
What we understand right now is that that was a temporary measure to stop these executions in Iran, and it's something the Trump administration is going to have to watch closely, understanding that the Iranian regime has a long history of executing political prisoners, executing people without trial, and that is the concern of the thousands of Iranian protesters who were taken to these prisons and jails across the country, that they can be killed at a later date once international attention shifts away from Iran. So the message that we're receiving from not only Iranian demonstrators, but also the Iranian diaspora around the world is to continue speaking about Iran over concern not just of those who were killed, but also those who remain in Iranian prisons.
Yeah, I thought that 24-year-old was beaten to death in prison. That's a report I had heard.
I know.
We also know that David Barnea, who's head of Mossad, is now in Florida meeting with Steve Witkoff and others. So real quick, Trey, why do you think Netanyahu went public and said, we really don't think the president should act now? Why do you think he tried to make sure the president didn't act?
There are a couple things to consider here, but when you look to last summer, during June of 2025, there was a 12-day war between Israel and Iran, and we were reporting here on the ground in the Middle East amid that incoming ballistic missile fire. Around half of the missiles that were shot down were actually shot down by U.S. vessels and air defense systems who were helping the Israelis to ensure that their airspace was clear amid this incoming attack. And so that's one of a number of reasons why the Israelis may have asked for a delay in a possible strike on Iran, understanding that if this leads to an all-out war, the Israelis are going to need the assistance of the United States.
All right, Trey, thanks. Trey, thank you very much.
The Trump administration decided against the military intervention because the Israeli government and their counterparts told them not to do that. But Donald Trump did say he will take strong actions if the Iranian government begins executing those protesters. Here's the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro. More broadly, as a Jewish leader yourself, are you surprised that we're not seeing more demonstrations in support of Iranian people, for instance, trying to liberate themselves from this oppressive regime, like we saw with protesters rallying for Palestine when Israel was being accused of genocide?
I don't think it matters that I'm Jewish when I say this. I think what matters is that we should all stand up and acknowledge the extraordinary bravery that we're seeing from the Iranian people who are taking to the streets, knowing that their lives could be cut short by this repressive regime who are out killing these protesters. I think it is extraordinary what we're seeing in Iran.